And welcome back to the Protagonists on the World today. Nice to have the company of a great panel too. Now, the Epstein-Mandelson affair continues to cause embarrassment for Keir Starmer and his government. Emails released from 2009 to 2010 show Mandelson, a former Labor heavyweight, sharing confidential Downing Street, such as a $20 billion pound asset, £20 billion asset sale, and Eurozone bailout plans with Epstein, who also made, I think it was $75,000 in payments to him or his associates. Prime Minister Keir Starmer called these actions a betrayal during PMQs, that's questions and answers, and admitting vetting failures in Mandelson's appointment. Now, London's Met Police launched a criminal investigation into possible misconduct, while opposition leaders are demanding full accountability and release of emails. Now, this would appear to be the tip of a very large iceberg, which Mandelson should be sitting on the top of, and with more trouble to come. True to its colours, the UK media is promoting another Russiagate. She was working for the Russians. Anyway, I think Basil and everybody else will discount that as just pure hogwash and balderdash. But this is stoking claims of Putin as the puppet master and minimising Epstein's well-known links to Robert Maxwell, Mossad, Israel, and many are saying Tony Blair. Shock horror. Why would he do something bad? Now let's talk to our guests who are keen followers of UK politics and Epstein intrigues. Our guest this week or tonight are Basil Valentine, broadcaster and journalist, Pippa Bartolotti, author and activist, and Danny Armstrong, a Russia specialist. And he hates me saying that, but that's what it's on my list to say. And he is a Russia specialist, having lived in Russia for many, many years. First of all, Basil, welcome back. Thank you very much for your time. What's your overall feeling on this sordid affair thing with Mandelson, and you've got Tony Blair being sort of pulled in, and you've got formerly Prince Andrew, he's there too, and Nigel Farage says many, many more names will be coming out. What's your views?
Well, including his Mike, Nigel Farage is also mentioned in the Epstein files, but sordid is indeed the right word. And you said in your preamble there that Mandelson's involvement with Epstein is the tip of the iceberg. It's worth remembering that Todd Blanche, the Deputy Attorney General in the United States, when he announced the release of these 3 million files, said that another 1.5 million are being withheld because they relate to graphic scenes of abuse, violence, torture, possibly even murder. Yet we're not allowed to see them because they're too horrific. Now, no one is alleging that Peter Mandelson was involved in anything like that, but his husband received $75,000, as you mentioned, from Epstein. The nature of their relationship was far deeper and lasted far longer than he was previously willing to admit. And indeed, Mandelson had returned to the heart of government in the UK. He was, of course, appointed British ambassador to Washington by Keir Starmer. That was an absolutely atrocious error of judgment because Epstein had already been convicted. Not only that, he was dead by the time that happened. And Starmer knew of Mandelson's relationship. Now, what's coming under the microscope is, did Mandelson lie about the extent of his relationship with Epstein in order to get the job? Starmer has ordered the release of files. But the whole thing is an appalling mess. And Mandelson, as I was saying, although British ambassador to Washington, flew back to help mastermind the most recent cabinet reshuffle. Mandelson was particularly close to Morgan McSweeney, the fixer in Number 10, who reportedly twisted Keir's arm to get Mandelson the job in Washington. So a lot of people are saying if a head is going to roll at this point, who could be Morgan McSweeney. But also, the whispers in the House of Commons among backbenchers are that Keir's days are numbered. And were there a credible alternative candidate already in Parliament, then he would be facing a leadership challenge in the coming days and weeks.
Uh, Pippa, what's your views? And by the way, welcome to the protagonist here on the World Today. What's your views on this? It's getting juicier by the day.
It certainly is. I have to say that, I mean, there's nothing like shutting the door after the horse has bolted, is there? And this was always a scandal, right through from the very early days when we knew Mandelson was a wrong un, let's put it that way, but that's putting it mildly. But really, from a female perspective, I ought to add that Epstein was running a factory of systematic abuse for profit, for control, for power. We don't know who was pulling his strings, although, of course, we can guess. And as Basil said earlier, they're trying to say it's Russia. Oh, it's always Russia, isn't it? Oh, my goodness me. I mean, we'll find that Putin was personally involved by tonight, I expect. It's much more likely to be Mossad. And when you look at Starmer himself, most likely groomed, the human rights lawyer who really didn't concern himself too much with human rights, bumped up without personality or agenda to be leader of the Labour Party, bumped up even further by, I must say, a cunning electoral strategy, which got Labour a very good majority in the House of Commons. But Starmer himself is a non-entity in so many ways. His allowing of Mandelson to come back yet again into public office wasn't just a mistake. It was a dire infringement of the rights of the women who have been abused after all these years. This factory and the photographs prove. I mean, Mandelson in his underwear, young girls all around. I mean, it's a very strange affair. But I really have to say out loud that what was going on in these private hotels, these private islands, was beyond adjectives. I recoil at the thought of what was going on there. We know about Handy Andy, the ex-prince. We know way too much about him for too many years. The rumours have been rife. So there's no surprise there. The surprise is going to be everyone else involved. And I hope they all get named and shamed, because just naming Mandelson and a couple of others is a form of scapegoating. It's letting possibly hundreds of other vile men and women off the hook. I think we've got it wrong by just targeting one man. We're just making it look as if it's him. It's not. It's all of them, or a large quantity of the people, the elites with power and money, who are so corrupted. And as we know, power and money do lead often to corruption. As we know, corruption is the road to evil. And that's what's happening here. Pure evil. I think the whole establishment should fall if there's to be any justice for these women and for these girls who, over so many years, have been mistreated and abused and used as toys for these powerful men.
Danny, we'll get into your, because I heard a clunk when you fell and hit your head on the floor when you found out that that Epstein was working for Putin. But and same with me. We all got headaches at the moment because I've never heard such rubbish in my life. But just on to more serious things, though. What's your thoughts on this? It's a bit. I mean, it's sort of like when you read this and hear it, you feel dirty. And then you realise that you feel dirty and that the British government, in this case, are making you feel dirty. It's a pretty scary thought, and it's a pretty repulsive thought too, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'd like to come back just before I touch on anything else to Pippa's point. Of course, the complete violation of the girls and the women that were involved in this is absolutely something that's beyond anything that we can comprehend or beyond certainly any of our intellect, and that's not a slight on anybody's power to think or power to describe anything. It's beyond our ability to put into words. Uh, but of course, on the female front, what we've seen is a complete slander of Russian people, of Russian politics, of anything Russian. We've seen dragged through the mud in the fallout from this. And one of the things was Russians were mentioned in three cases. Well, three of the most important cases. Okay, so we had Vladimir Putin mentioned 1,055 times apparently in these millions and millions of Epstein files. Of course, 1,500, and 55 times is not really that much when you're considering how many emails were sent back and forth, and the way he was mentioned as well is of course largely insignificant. The fact that there was a honey trap to snare the world's elite or the West's elite is also a very careful and a very calculated way of smearing the Russian people and the Russian powers that be, even though that this is the West elites. It was well thought through, it was premeditated, and they did it knowing full well who Jeffrey Epstein was and what they were getting involved in. But of course, they can't control themselves, and of course, it's not their fault, it's Russia's fault because they were setting up such an enticing honey trap that they couldn't resist, basically. And of course, Bill Gates is STD, and of course, he would get an STD, not from any other nationality. Of course, it
But
was
the Russians.
girls. Of course, it was Russian girls. Of course, he got an STD from Russian girls. So, for Pippa's point is entirely valid, and of course, when it comes to Russians, doubly so, because Russians, as we know, as we've read, as we've seen, are the cause of all evil. It's not the West, and it's not the elite. It's not the bankers. It's not the politicians. It's not those in the echelons of society. Of course, it's all behind the scenes. Russia, whether Putin was his wealth manager, or whether it's girls that were infected with God knows what, sleeping with the Microsoft chief and giving him all sorts of sore parts. I mean, it's just a complete smear on all levels. And one thing I will touch on just before we hand back, get somebody else's view on this, is the English media or the British legacy media's reaction. The Daily Mail still went with the Russian spy narrative. Of course, that's got to be tired by now. The amount of times I've had that directed at myself, being a Russian spy or a Russian asset. LBC, Andrew Marr, coming out with what he thinks is the most important thing that's come out of all this. Imagine thinking this, the most important thing that's come out of all this is the ties to Russia. Of course, those ties to Russia are never going to go away. Certainly if you make them up yourself and if you create that yourself. And also Donald Tusk, who's an absolutely completely outspoken critic of Russia, of Vladimir Putin, who said that of course he's also propagated that Russian spy sort of narrative. This just seems to be something that's widespread through not only the UK, but of course through Europe as well. But yeah, I'm having a good old chuckle, but of course it's at the expense of feeling terribly dirty, which is something that I think was probably the main goal of the people involved in this. Of course, that horrid whatever it is that joins these people up, that joins the dots in those files, and whatever kept them doing what they were doing. Of course, even after they were outed as having links to them, like Peter Mandelson.
A couple of things, just a sidebar thing here. I'm just thinking, did Putin send a get well card to Bill Gates? I'm just wondering. and maybe the name of his company was actually authored by one of these Russian women, being Microsoft. Anyway, that's just a bit of a underplay there on words. Basil, we have Keir Starmer yet associated with another disaster. But we have our former PM, and I've just seen his name pop up in a few stories, and that's Tony Blair, not one of your favourites, and nobody's favourite. It seems to be swamping. I mean, you've got to drain the swamp, but it is actually swamping politics at the moment. What's your thoughts on this?
Well, first of all, just to touch on the ludicrous accusations that Russia was somehow running Jeffrey Epstein. What that does in terms of British media is simply to identify either A, the unbelievably stupid, or B, far more likely, those individuals and organizations who are assets of the United Kingdom national security state, because it is the UK deep state that has been one of the prime engines of the enmity in the West towards Russia. So when Andrew Marr, who a lot of people say is intelligent, I've yet to see much evidence of that, but when he starts spouting nonsense about this being Russian, all that does to me is immediately mark him down as an asset of the security services. As for Blair, well, the same thing applies to him. Now newly elevated to the repulsive Gaza Board of Peace, so-called, he has become the ultimate swamp creature. And that's what we're dealing with here. I mean, it's a pyramid, really. At the top level, the visible part, the top of the iceberg, you can see individual politicians having been compromised by whatever material Jeffrey Epstein and his accomplice Ghislaine Maxwell, perhaps other accomplices, whatever material they were able to obtain in the honey trap brownstone mansion, and also, of course, on the private island elsewhere, whatever they could film of politicians doing things they shouldn't do. But underneath that, there are other layers pertaining to satanic ritual abuse, human sacrifice. The term pizza crops up a lot. Now, some people may remember Pizzagate was an alleged pedophile. People say PDF these days, by the way. People talk about PDFs and graping in order to get past the YouTube centers. Anyway, PDF ring in Washington run by senior Democrat politicians that also possibly involved murder. Although Donald Trump says he would like to draw a line under Epstein and we should all move on, doubtless that is Tony Blair's point of view as well, actually this investigation is going to go on and on forever. But what it does display more than anything else is the absolutely rotten stench that comes out of the elite oligarchy that is supposed to be running the world. They're absolute scum, Mike, and I don't mind saying so.
Here, here. Pippa, follow that one up for us. But you can't.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think Starmer might be having a Lady Macbeth moment, out damn spot. I mean, the dirt is sticking. It's not going to go away. He isn't going to be there much longer. I sincerely hope, but his ratings were at an all-time low before this kicked off. So I would imagine he was off the scale in terms of popularity by today. So yeah, him and all those around him, there are very few who are going to come out of this clean. Angela Rayner may be actually one of them, oddly enough. But I also want to go back to those who, people have been saying, we turned our back on Epstein. We didn't want to have anything to do with him. Well, they also knew what was going on, didn't they? And they said nothing, and they did nothing. And they are part of the crime because they knew. And I don't know where the law is going to stand on this in the end, but they too should be prosecuted because they allowed it to continue and allowed goodness knows how many young women and girls to continue to be abused. So the net is very wide. I mean, 4 million documents isn't an accident. it's a very well documented set of circumstances. And redaction isn't an accident, that's part of the crime. We should not have these papers redacted. I understand about protecting the actual innocent, but what they're doing is protecting the guilty. And this is really not conscionable. I think the whole world needs to wake up to what's going on because, my greatest fear is like 2 or maybe 3 people will resign or be prosecuted and everybody will move on. And, that can't be allowed to happen this time. I want to just add another element. When there's a racist element to paedophilia, all over the papers, this ring of people from Asian backgrounds, a paedophile ring. It goes on for years, and the whole minorities are smeared with this. But that isn't going to happen in this case. It's going to be headlines for a while. The police have always said they're not going to release papers because it will harm their investigation. Oh, yeah. I think that really all of us have got to keep pushing at this one because we're never going to drain the swamp. That's not going to happen. But we can make it a lot smaller. And that has to be the aim. And we've got to start even through everyday laws on taxation and on redistribution of wealth. We've got to start moving things away from the rich and powerful. They don't deserve anything. They've got too much already. And let's see where it's got them. We need a sea change in not just British politics, American politics, and many other politics, European as well. The implications of what has come out of the Epstein files have got to have roots far across the world, and we need to dig them up and burn them.
Totally agree. The Danny, it's sort of this whole kit and caboodle. You have people from all over the world, in government ministers, even in Australia. Our former ambassador, who Donald Trump hated, Kevin Rudd, he was also mentioned in the dispatches. I'm not saying Kevin Rudd was a frequent visitor, but he was mentioned. So he's like an octopus, isn't he? Great film about Russian spies, Octopussy. But he's like this octopus, Epstein. He's everywhere, all over the world. He's got a tentacle there, a tentacle there, and a tentacle there. What about in Russia? Is there any rumblings about, I don't know if you could say, we may never see you again. But I'm just wondering, did he have his octopus tentacles into the Russian elite?
Well, it's an interesting question, and my answer would be that Jeffrey Epstein said he did have his tentacles in, as you put it, into the Russian elite. He did have those connections to Vladimir Putin. Now, what we've got is Vladimir Putin being mentioned, as I said, just over 1,000 times in around about 4 million emails. Now, if it's 4 million, that's once in every 4,000 emails. Again, when you're talking about the grand scheme of things and all the other people and all the other events and all the other projects or kind of money laundering were mentioned, all different sorts of schemes. That's not a big amount, once in every 4,000. Now, what Jeffrey Epstein was, without doubt, I mean, people can go down different avenues as to who he was connected with or what he did or who he was as a person or who he was working for. But what he was a bluffer, a liar, and a bully. Now, if you're the biggest, baddest pimp on the block and you want to keep everybody who you're connected with in line, now surely the biggest, baddest baddie in the world, having him on your side is going to strengthen your position when dealing with these people. Now, I've read many of the mentions of Putin or President Putin, sorry, as I call him, as we should call him, is purely a mention. That's all that it is. There's no concrete evidence of meetings. There's no concrete evidence of connections. There's purely fleeting, tenuous mentions of the president's name, and that's it. These are mentions. One particular one that stands out is in the aborted meeting with Reid Hoffman, who's the creator and the founder of LinkedIn, who was unable to meet him because he didn't want to change his schedule. That went through one of his seconds or one of his assistants, and that's a common theme within these mentions. In terms of whether he did have anything to do with Russia, I mean, it's coming out now that he had much more to do with the West and much more to do with things that were connected to Russia through a third party. For instance, we know of his ties with Rothschild. We know that he tipped off the profitability of the Ukraine war long before it began. And of course, as we see now, Rothschild has tied up a $20 billion debt restructuring contract with Ukraine. Ukraine is going to be in debt to the Rothschilds, or can be working with at least the Rothschilds for many, many years to come. It takes heat off the UK funneling billions and billions of pounds, or any other EU nation funneling those funds into Ukraine, and that being linked back to Epstein. If we just avert it and say, oh, sorry, no, it was Russia, that's where he got his money from. He didn't get it from us. He didn't tell us to invest in this highly profitable war that's been going on now for 4 years. It was Russia. It was Putin. Of course, what does Putin stand to gain from that? Of course, if the blame, when the lid is blown entirely, completely off this, if the blame comes back onto Vladimir Putin and the Russian people, and the Russian women are so dirty that even an oil painting like Bill Gates, of course, not really known for being a modern day sire, is diseased by their people. What benefit does that bring to Russia? One of the other the main key players in this as well, part of the Obama administration, Kathy Rumler, who's very high up in Goldman Sachs now, was caught giving Jeffrey Epstein advice on how to get around trafficking laws without breaking US constitutional laws, without getting himself into trouble. Now, there's a lot of, I think it goes without saying, a lot of deflection here, a lot of flicking the blame over to basically the whipping boy. I think Pippa said just before that ethnic minorities cop for a lot in these grooming gangs, or these rape stories, or these PDF and grape, as Basil put it before, stories all over the internet. But I think the main ethnic population that suffered in all of this is the Russians. Again, Russians being dragged under the bus, being dragged through the dirt when there's key players hiding in plain sight, like, of course, like Rumler, like the Rothschilds, and many, many more. And I'm sure we're going to find out about many, many more. Ayud Barak, also, he was caught. Do you think Vladimir Putin's going to be caught going into Jeffrey Epstein's New York mansion with a scarf barely covering his face? I mean, it's something that's it looks like an internet meme. It does look like something that someone has come up with to poke fun at the sort of unprofessionalism of a covert operation. But of course, I mean, that's exactly what this is. But it's from the other side. It's not coming from Russia. It's being all put onto Russia, as it was blame being piled on. So in terms of did he have Russian connections? I mean, we've seen in these Epstein files, it proves absolutely nothing. All it proves is that Jeffrey Epstein was a bluffer, a bully, a despicable man who used the name of President Putin many times. Well, of course, as I said, on the grand scheme of things, not many times at all. 1,000 times out of 4 million emails, but used it for his own muscle to appear more powerful than he actually was.
I've got a terrible line there. I'm not going to go because I'll get growled at later on, and I have to keep it clean. Basil, it's much more, isn't it, than just getting your jollies off. It's actually it's starting now to show that governments are highly compromised, and security itself is an issue. And tell me this. I sort of see both here as one. The tabloids now, especially the legacy media, are running off with the claims that it was Putin, it was the Russians. It's a distraction, of course. The narrative will continue. It sounds very much like an information operation run by probably MI5. What's your thoughts?
Well, yes, exactly. I mean, I don't, want to dwell too long on the ludicrous Russiagate hoax. Believe it or not, Christopher Steele, the architect of the original Russiagate hoax, is being wheeled out as somehow relevant. There's no point giving any energy or thought to that nonsense at all, except, as I said, it identifies who's working for the security services and those still pushing for war with Russia. Um, but what this is doing gradually is laying bare the absolutely abysmal way the world is run. It's as simple as that. It's run on a blackmail network. Whitney Webb has done terrific research into all this. One nation under blackmail, particularly the United States, but also the United Kingdom, the European Union. We don't know, in addition to Epstein, who else has been running this kind of blackmail ring. It's long been suspected. The first knockings of it were about 30 years ago, that some form of satanic ritual abuse was actually at the heart of government, to beggars belief, and people called David Icke a lunatic when he first started talking about this. But it's got much closer to the surface. Let's not forget the Mexican woman, Gonzalez, in 2009, who said she attended a wealthy party where people were eating a human being. And indeed, in the Epstein files, there is a mention of eating the intestines of a baby or something. I mean, really off the charts stuff in terms of the horror, the sheer level of evil that we are dealing with. Gaza, on the one hand, with the admitted now slaughter of 70,000, 40,000 at least of the women and children. I personally think the figure is probably more like 10 times that. We don't know how many people are under the rubble. On a macro level, tremendous human sacrifice there. And now we're beginning to discover that there may be a human sacrifice on a smaller scale underpinning the corridors of power. So when Pippa says we can't drain the swamp, on the contrary, we need a complete clearing out of the current political elite, the oligarchy, and many of the so-called structures of power that have served populations around the world so badly since the Second World War.
Pippa, how would you describe Epstein's job description?
Great question, Mike. Well, I would say he
Slug?
was the
Slug, maybe?
the
Swat?
I'm really struggling to find the right words, because he was kind of the chief instigator of blackmail instrumentation, wasn't he? And he was well funded by others who were in on it and who wanted this to happen. We look across the pond to Trump, and we know Trump's got something on almost everybody, and that's his game. And he, of course, is part of the Epstein circle. The fact that he never blew the whistle on Epstein when he knew what was going on is quite enough for me to understand that he was part of it. So this is a massive piece of work. Mossad has been mentioned and should be mentioned, because let's remember, these governments were part of the genocide of Palestinians and still are. Why is it that Starmer has never spoken about it? Why is the Labour Party not allowed to talk about it? Why is, in the States, we have the Republicans and the Democrats not talking about a genocide, as if one Holocaust makes another one okay? I'm afraid to say that pointing the finger at Mossad is much more realistic than pointing it at Putin. And Epstein, who of course was famously suicided by magically managing to hang himself from a bottom bunk when, whoops, magically all the cameras were off, and whoops, magically the shift changes or something else happened. I mean, he knew everything. So he was the chief perpetrator, the public face of power, evil, and corruption that is used to run our world. That is used, and we can see clearly, to fund and perpetuate the genocide of the Palestinian people. Let's not brush that one under the carpet. I think, as Danny brought it up, we should air it and say, why are all these politicians happy enough to allow, to fund, and to add to the genocide by means of weapons and diplomatic cover? It's not an accident that all these people were involved with Epstein.
Danny, what's your thoughts? And also, it was mentioned Mossad. Of course, he's got his links into Israel, and who hasn't? That's another player, isn't it, that we haven't yet looked at. They're blaming the Russians. They're going to blame everybody except probably the most obvious if you're looking at government interference, and that's from Israel.
Yeah, I think it comes back again to what I said about hiding in plain sight. Of course, it's highly convenient to say that this is Russia's fault, and try and lead the people astray again. The word Russia, and there's a great phrase in Russian that says, "My tongue is my enemy," and I think the stories that have come out about Vladimir Putin and about Russia and this complete caricature that's been built in the Western press of Vladimir Putin as embodying everything that is evil and everything that is wrong with the world, it's sort of come back to haunt them in some kind of poetically justified way. So it's some sort of justice hitting home to the Western press. This monster that they made actually worked in Jeffrey Epstein's favor, whereas just the mere mention of his name struck fear into the hearts of anybody that was involved in this, as you say, this black male paedophile group. Now, we've heard a lot about Donald Trump saying that he's been absolved. Now, does this absolve Vladimir Putin? I'm waiting for those stories to come out. I think I'll be waiting for a very long time for Vladimir Putin to pay any attention to this nonsense that's going on. But I'm waiting for somebody to come out and say this actually absolves Russia. This actually absolves President Putin, because of course, in the absence of any or any strong link or any strong documentation anywhere in these leaks or anywhere in these files, we're still hearing the finger point, or we're still seeing the finger pointed at Russia, rather. And we've seen this before. We've seen this in the Obama era hoax of Russian collusion in the US presidential election. However much weight you put into the FBI findings, of course, Donald Trump, other figures like Rudy Giuliani and other Republican Party members don't put a lot of value into those findings. And of course, anything that is that concludes that Russia is the main instigator or the puppet master, of course, can be treated with a pinch of salt. However, the Kremlin was once mentioned. I think people have missed this as well. It's again about hiding in plain sight, rather. Now, Kremlin comes from the Russian word Kreml, which means citadel. I think I mentioned before Catherine Rumler, who was advising Jeffrey Epstein on how to traffic women and how to traffic girls and get around laws. Of course, he was picking the brains of many a person who was in high positions of power, high-ranking jobs. I think when she was attempting to get a job at Citadel, of course, the banking group, she said, "Are you going to trade one of your Russians for my computer?" In this way of saying that, are you gonna fix something for me to work for Citadel? So I would say, I mean, of course, with my knowledge of Russian, I was thinking, well, this is how come people haven't picked up on this? Of all the tenuous links that you could find back to the Kremlin, this one's staring at you right in the face. But there's many other things that are staring us right in the face. But the people who are involved, the main players, the people who have provable links to all of this, they're still saying to us, "Listen, no, this is not our fault. We're not funneling this investment into Ukraine through Rothschild and then washing it out and it coming back to us or coming back to the companies that we're involved with. This is all down to Vladimir Putin." So I'm just waiting for whenever someone's going to come out and say this absolves Putin. As much the way that Trump's been boasting that he's been absolved as well. But yeah, it takes the pressure off a lot of people. It takes the pressure off a lot of people pointing the finger at Russia, and that's what we're seeing right now.
Basil, I have one of the redacted pages, and it's pretty severe. And that's what that's what it looks like, a redacted page. It's not really. I'm just lying to you, Basil. It's my mouse pad, but that's what it looks like. And I saw Pippa almost fall over. It's true. Basil, we're all focusing, or up until now, we've been focusing on the sordid details of Jeffrey Epstein or Epstein, and all the sexual parties they used to have and all that sort of stuff. We have terrible, terrible person, pedophilia, all that. I'm just wondering though, these redacted pages, as my example, maybe governments involved, such as Epstein with Israel. Maybe all the information that's been erased or redacted is to do with more governments and political pressure.
Well, very possibly, Mike. We don't know, and we don't know the contents of the million or so documents that the Department of Justice refused to be released because they're too shocking. What is in them? Epstein wasn't just a serial pervert; he was also a financier. Peter Thiel, the CEO of Palantir, was quite heavily involved with Epstein. They were introduced by Reid Hoffman, the founder of LinkedIn. Palantir now have innumerable UK government contracts. They're deeply embedded. The way that just about everything the government does is privatized and outsourced these days. And for some reason, the UK government, in their infinite wisdom, have decided that Palantir are going to be involved in the creation of what we call the panopticon surveillance state. Also involved is Coresight AI, an Israeli firm whose facial recognition software has been a key part of Israel's genocide. That is now due to feature on Britain's streets. So, yes, I've no doubt that the black lines are covering up the names of politicians and influential and famous people. That's why they've been blocked out. Are we going to see any prosecutions? The Deputy Attorney General said that, oh, yes, where there's evidence, we will prosecute people. But of course, with sex crimes, it's very, very difficult to prove decades after the event. This is the case with Jimmy Savile. If you rape somebody, then uh, unless a sort of DNA swab is taken in the hours immediately afterwards, it boils down to being one person's word against another. So it's very difficult to prosecute people for a lot of these offences. Plus, of course, the disappeared children as well. Uh, I've seen a figure in the last couple of days of 500,000 children disappear in the United States every year. I don't know how many of those turn up, but as I say, the deep suspicion, this was true of Jimmy Savile as well, is that murder is involved down the line, particularly with the younger children. Will we ever see a proper investigation of that? Why aren't the FBI throwing all the resources they've got at it?
Yeah, I agree. And I think and as I said before, Pippa, when you read this and you read all and you see it, you know that there are terrible things behind these redactions, which I think could quite possibly would implicate governments. So they've been redacted and all the other bits and pieces. And so we're told one narrative on how revolting it is. Missing children is just phenomenal around the world. Look, as Basil said, 500,000 disappear. And your mind starts wandering off sometimes into TV land where anything goes sort of. You can great storylines and stuff, but if you get back to reality, it's really hard to work out what is reality. What do you think, with what you've read and what has come out at the moment? Are you more shocked or are you less surprised at the revelations?
Uh, well, we've only seen the tip of the iceberg, Mike. This is the thing. I'm not surprised at the media's reaction, which is to focus on one or two individuals and one or two sex crimes, and to scapegoat in that way, and not to look at the wider power structure that enabled Epstein, and that allowed him to operate in the way that he did. Uh, Child abuse and blackmail didn't start with Epstein. We go back to Corey Feldman and claiming that there was ritual child abuse in Hollywood, and it didn't finish with Epstein either. So it is to be hoped that this has opened the public's eyes to the way the world is run, and that we can now look forward to, well, I mean, perhaps we'll get a whistleblower out of Washington. That's what I'm hoping, is that somebody in the DOJ will go, okay, here's the rest of the files, and give them to WikiLeaks or something, because otherwise the speculation is going to continue.
Pippa, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree very much with Basil. I feel that we are at a moment of reckoning, and we've got to take it. Uh, we know that the police and the prosecution are not above corruption either. And we have to keep pressing. We absolutely have to keep pressing. Just like, for example, when the Palestine activists, Palestine Action, were criminalized and labeled as a terrorist group, we kept pushing and kept pushing. And just yesterday, the first 6 have been absolved of the crimes that they were being charged with. We have to keep pushing. We have to push at our justice and criminal investigators, because this is a white settler colonial crime. And I'm afraid that these people think they are above the law. And I'm afraid that the law thinks the same thing. So the only way we're going to get through it is to keep pushing, because they will want to bury it. Starmer will probably resign, and someone else who may be better, may be worse. And I mean, it's laughable to think it might be David Lammy, but someone else is going to come on, and they're going to try and sweep the board clean. We must not let that happen. It is a crime above all crimes. This perversion of morality that involves so many innocent people. We must not let the results of this go unanswered, because there are prosecutions, lines of them. And yes, I do hope that WikiLeaks or similar gets their hands on these documents and starts naming all the names. There are hundreds and hundreds of them. We all have to see them, and they have to face the music, because they knew they were doing wrong. They did it. Nobody forced them. They did it of their own. I was going to say initiative, but it's completely the wrong word, actually. They did this knowingly. They walked into it. And I'm afraid to say that it is down to us, we the people, the real journalists, to dig down and get the truth out and not let it rest.
We are running out of time. Danny, what do you see the future for this? Will it bring down the Starmer government? I don't know. Will it inhibit our celebrity game show host wanting to be a Prime Minister, Nigel Farage? Will he not? If more comes out, will he be implicated? What happens to politics in the UK? Does it just keep going along the same grubby way it has done over the last few decades?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think Keir Starmer's doing a pretty good job of destroying his own party, to be fair. He's well capable of that without anybody else's participation, of course. I mean, if it does come that he's forced out of office, or he's forced to resign or whatever, if he does lose an election, I'm pretty sure the finger pointing is going to come back to Moscow again. I'm pretty sure Vladimir Putin is going to have something to do with that. Well, in his words, probably. In actual fact, of course, not, as we've seen time and time again. I think with everything on the table and everything that's been revealed, I don't think it's an excuse for Russia to be glib about it. Of course, there's been nothing that's come out from the Russian side about this, nothing from the Kremlin, nothing from Vladimir Putin himself or his spokesman, Dmitry Peskov. There's nothing there's no attention being given to it. It's very much a West problem that's being made something of Russian root. And of course, I think the longer this goes on and the longer that Western politicians are implicated in this, the whole landscape of Western politics is just gonna eat itself alive. It's been doing a good job of that for a long time. So yeah, as far as the current issue is concerned, of course, something that's irrefutable is Epstein's affinity to Ukraine, Epstein's tipping off of the Rothschilds of how much money they could earn with the conflict in Ukraine, and the again referencing the finger pointing in the face of these files coming back to Moscow. These people are hiding in plain sight. They're there to be shot at. They're there to be brought down. But of course, they're slippery. And what we're seeing again is just pure chicanery. For the West to eat itself alive, it's been a long time coming. And Russia, of course, comes out of this. If anybody comes out of it, sort of relatively cleanly, it's definitely Russia, cleanly out of a dirty, murky situation.
Basil, do you see, again, the same question, do you see, though, your political system or the confidence or trust of people within those who are representing them, and that's a loose word, by the way, representing, do you see that trust being eroded even more? How do you see the lay of the land in the months to come? Because it's all unraveling, even with my redacted copy I have here, which I'm sure it says something under it. But it is still coming out, isn't it? It is still starting now to bite, and it is now starting to do damage.
Well, British political parties are like a hydra, Mike. You cut off one head and another one appears. Pippa raised the spectre of David Lammy as Prime Minister. I think Wes Streeting is more likely, although he was particularly close to Mandelson. So hopefully he is a damaged brand, described hilariously, of course, by Alexei Sayle as Keir Starmer's love child made of margarine. Unfortunately, we're lumbered with a system in Britain where every 5 years, and it won't be for another 3.5 years yet, the population gets to choose between the lesser of two evils through an absolutely archaic system of first past the post that gave the Labour Party a thumping great majority with the support of roughly 1 in every 7 adults in Britain. A third of those that voted, only half the population voted. And when you include the people not on the electoral roll, then you would find roughly 1 in 7 people supporting the Labour Party. Yet that they claim as some sort of mandate. Unfortunately, like turkeys, they don't tend to vote for Christmas. So there'll be more rearranging of the deck chairs on the Titanic. There will be lots of talk and scapegoating of 1 or 2 individuals. But unfortunately, the way things are arranged at the moment, I don't see any major change. That might come at the next election, and Labour will suffer some bloody noses along the way. I think there's every chance of the Green Party candidate, for better or worse, winning the Manchester Gorton by-election that's upcoming in a few weeks' time. But in terms of, the numbers in the House of Commons, that will have scarcely any effect at all. So I'm afraid we're in for more of the same. Wouldn't surprise me if Starmer went. I think he's only ever been a puppet, and a new puppet is required because his brand wasn't working before this scandal. And commentators are saying that he shows appalling judgment on just about everything. And that's right. He's going to try and move the agenda on this week to what Labour are doing for communities, but I'm afraid it won't wash. He's got to go.
Good on you. And Pippa, you have the final say.
Well, whilst this is all going on, the Labour Party is looking to resume, in inverted commas, arms sales to Israel. Funny that. They're going to push through everything they can in this moment, if you like, before the brown stuff really starts spinning around the fan. I, I really truly feel that if politics doesn't change after this, we're pretty much doomed, aren't we? Into this morass of mistrust. Let's face it, the people don't trust the media anymore. Everybody's going to alternative media, to social media for the real news, and to start making up their own mind. So if there is a burgeoning of intelligence among the voting public, and if the other half of the population are given something to vote for, because so very often it's something to vote against, we might something happen. I'm as concerned about what happens in America as I am here, because we tend to be the sort of weak third carbon copy of what is going on there. There is a move towards authoritarianism here and fascism, and we have to be very mindful of that. I mean, I'm going off right now to speak at a anti-reform launch of their campaign in Wales, ready for the Welsh elections. They need a bloody nose, but then most of them need a bloody nose, and then we must keep giving the truth in a way that people understand it, not a bunch of soundbite lies that people are too quick to grasp onto. We have to start honing the messages to give people something positive to think about and something to actually believe in for a change.
Absolutely brilliant. I've got to thank you, all of you, for being a part of this panel on the protagonists. Basil Valentine, dear friend, great broadcaster, and miss you very much, by the way, Basil. If somebody wants to find out more about you, I do have those videos from me. I must
Very more compromat, eh, mate? Yeah, no, I'm now a regular. Go on.
No, that's my lips are sealed. But there's some funny days from TNT. Let me tell you, they were. It was interesting for a while, anyway. Basil, somebody wants to find out more about you. How do they do that?
I'm a regular now, I'm pleased to say, on UK Column on Fridays from 1 p.m. UK time. So you can see me there every Friday at 1 o'clock.
With a very good journo, too. And another dear friend,
That's right.
007.
Patrick Henningson, yeah.
Yes, very, very good. Very good indeed. Pippa Bartolotti, hang on. Let's start that again. Pippa Bartolotti is what I'm trying to say. Sorry about that. If somebody wants to find out more about you, how do they do that?
Oh, well, there's only one of me. Track me down on social media, find all the links. I work in several spheres, and if any of our listeners want to join Global Women United for Peace Against NATO, just look us up. You'll find us.
Good on you. And Danny Armstrong, a Russia-based journalist. How do we find out more about you?
Everywhere I'm Danny Wayne Armstrong, so just put the app before it. And by the way, I never said I hated you calling me a Russia expert. I just said it caused me a great deal of embarrassment. So I don't mind a bit of embarrassment, Mike. Yeah.
Yes, right. We'll talk about that later. Thank you very much for joining us. I appreciate it. This has been The Protagonists. This is The World Today.